President of IUMP. I welcome you all on behalf of IUMP to this IUMP webinar on Publishing in Medical Physics Journal. I know why you are here today, because all of you want to be successful in publishing in journals. And for that reason, we have two very highly accomplished professionals with lots of experience in publishing and overseeing the publishing process. They will be talking to you today. But before I pass on to the moderator of today's session and first speaker, some logistic points. We are always asked about the availability of recorded webinars after the session. So whenever you go to the IUMP website, there is a thumbnail here for webinars. So when you click the IUMP webinars, then right on the left side, IUMP School webinars recordings. So when you click there, all the webinars which have been done in the past, their recording is available. So that is how you can reach there. Second thing which is normally asked is certificates. We do not issue a certificate of attendance or of anything. So this is purely an educational activity. Third thing, we will have questions and answers at the end of the session. So please write your questions in the chat box. So with that, let me go over to introducing Professor Paolo Russo. He is professor at the University of Napoli, Italy. He served as the reviewer for various journals, national and international journals. And he was, associate editor of Physica Medica, the European Journal of Medical Physics, between 2008 and 2012. And from 2013, he has been the editor-in-chief of this journal. He is chair of the publication committee of IUMP, and in addition, he was chair of the publication committee and communication committee of IFOMP. He has more than 160 papers in international peer-reviewed journals and scientific book chapters. With that brief introduction, I will ask Professor Paolo Russo first to start his presentation, and then he will be moderating the session. He will introduce the next speaker, and after the second speaker is done, then we will have the question answer. Paolo, over to you, please.
Thank you, Madan. I hope you can see my shared screen.
Yes.
Thank you. Good day to everybody. So, the topic here this morning is about publishing in medical physics journals. So we're speaking first me and afterwards, immediately afterwards, Juliana Tomadazou, about the experience with the Physica Medica. I will have a short, relatively short introduction, and then I will give the word to Juliana Tomadazou. So first, European Journal of Medical Physics is the official organ of IFOMP, European Federation. Is also a scientific publication of IUMP. As regards submitted articles by country and region, I took up the latest 2 years, 2019 and 2020 up to now, up to October really. We receive normally something like 800 papers submissions last year. We are going to reach 1,000 papers this year. And we can see the geographical distribution, which mainly comes from Asia, here the pink black here, and then from Europe and so on. As regards 2019 and 2020 year distribution of the top 10 countries which contribute to submissions in our journal, we can go, as you can see here, in the bottom part from Iran, Japan, Italy, China, United States, India, Turkey, Republic of Korea, Australia, Spain. But as regards accepted articles, not just submitted, accepted articles, the distribution cause sees a lower number of papers, and this is the distribution for this year, where we collected up to now something like 250 papers. We will publish something like 300 papers this year. This is the geographical distribution, but as you can see here, in that case, the trend of top 10 countries for accepted papers is different. In this case, goes from Italy, Japan, United States, France, Australia, and so on. Some numbers which are important. The impact factor of EGMP for 2019 is 2.485. What does this mean? This means that if you take all papers published under the surveillance and the registration of Clarivate Analytics in the journal citation reports published in 2019, and if you look at them, at the citations, and look at the papers published in Physica Medica in the 2 years later, 2017 and 2018, then each paper in Physica Medica on those 2-year period was published on the average 2.485 times. This is the definition of the impact factor. Okay, just for reference, you know that the best journals, let me say, medical physics, have an impact factor which hardly exceeds 3 normally. But let us see also another factor of relevance, which is the usage when you go on the different platforms, which for EGMP means Science Direct, the direct physicamedica.com website, or the Clinical Key collection. In that case, just a figure. When we consider the so-called usage of full text, which corresponds then finally to downloads of paper, we are speaking of, you see, 1/3 of a million on average each year, 333,000 in 2008, 315,000 in 2019. The projected number for this year, for this COVID year, is in line, so 300,021. Of course, we have to spread out this usage in the different states. You see, for example, that out of the total usage, which is close to 180,000 downloads, for United States, that corresponds to roughly 70,000. From China, 19. United Kingdom, 11,000. Japan, Italy, and so on. The rest of the world is 1/3 of this, and so on. This corresponds to this plot on the right, to the top 5 countries, and you can see that apart from the rest of the world, for example, we have China 10% of the usage. This is just to see what is the impact of this journal. However, when we go, as I said, this year, for example, 2020 up to now, where we received last October more than 800 papers. The rejected one are as many as over 500. Really, the rejection we experienced in Physica Medica in the last several years, and these are the figures for the last 2 years, is close to 70%, which means that for some reason, 7 out of 10 papers submitted are rejected, and then only 3 out of 10 are published. As we consider two forms of rejection, what we call the desk rejection, and the rate for us is 17%. 17% do not reach the evaluation stage, the peer review stage, and 53% of all papers are rejected after peer review. So let us come to the main part of my presentation. Reasons for rejection. What is the workflow for peer review? You know that the authors submit to the journal their article, which goes through this chain. First to the editor-in-chief, then to the associate editor, then to the reviewers, provided that either the associate editor or the editor-in-chief does not send back, you see the red line here, with the back workflow, provided that the associate editor or the editor-in-chief do not outright reject the paper. In in case the paper go to the reviewers, then after review, they send suggestions to the associate editor. The associate editors add his or her own evaluation of the manuscript, sees the suggestions of the reviewers, and sends to the editor-in-chief a recommendation, and then the editor-in-chief takes the decision, which can be, of course, accept, reject, or in between, revise. So, outright rejection. 17 of the papers in Physica Medica are outright rejected. This may come from a number of reasons. First, the topic is out of the journal scopes. There is evidently, in the judgment of the associate editor, typically, there is overall a low scientific quality, or there is an evident lack of relevance in the field. You may be directly rejected because your manuscript is written in bad English, or because it is too lengthy. There is evidence of plagiarism. Please avoid all these negative aspects. And all journals have means to automatically detect any kind of plagiarism or even self-plagiarism. The same for multiple submission, or you may be rejected because the format of the journal, the format of the papers does not match the format of the journal. For example, in the structure or in the references, or in general because there is an unprofessional kind of manuscript preparation. It may happen that I send it to a journal and then my paper is rejected. Then I send back to another journal. I don't even add my changes, or I don't even change the submission letter. Then when the new editor sees the letter, submission letter, it rejects automatically. So, provided that it is not outright rejected, you can have a problem with your manuscript evaluation because the content is good, but weak is form. And this normally may be determined by inexperience, by the authors who take care of the writing of the paper. And then the editor may wonder then, is it the case that I send on or I send back for, and I reject, or I send on for further consider for revision? You can have a good form, but a weak content. And this normally comes from determining in a bad way or in a weak way the selection of the scientific goal of the paper. Of course, you may have a weak content and a weak form. Where weak means presence of flaws in the study, in the data interpretation, the paper may be not of particular interest at the moment, presently, in this specific field. Maybe it's an old theme, let me say, all the low overall relevance, but in this case it is rejected after peer review. The demonstration provided by the authors in their studies is not fully convincing, and I prefer to reject. And material is presented in a clear way. The sample size, for example, may be too small, and so on. So, weak content. I point to one of the major reasons for rejection, which, in my opinion, sums up to 30% of all rejections. Lack of originality, lack of novelty, which may mean lack of the practical relevance of the theme, weaknesses in the methodological aspects, or the fact that the manuscript just presents a confirmation of well-known results. And as I'm summarizing here, in very, very many cases that I see, drawbacks in the manuscript content are related to the origin of writing the paper, to the selection of the purpose of the study. You have some time, you are devoted to research, please take care in selecting carefully which is the topic of your investigation, because this will eventually produce a successful paper and not a convincing paper, which may be rejected. But the peer review as a process of evaluation of papers as pitfalls were recognized since the first time it was introduced, more or less 400 years ago. So you have here the arrows which go from a weak paper to a level which increases up to a strong paper. And there is a level of decision taken by the editor-in-chief, typically, which is the final decision level. Below, you may be asked to reject, you are being rejected, or you may be asked to revise your manuscript, but finally the final decision is either accept or not. This level is set by all journals. is not a definite label. You may have even a green line, which means a good paper, but if the journal sets a decision line above certain level, they say that it is not fully adequate for their standards. There's nothing to do. You are rejected even though you consider you produced a good paper. So, what is the hint? Self-evaluate your own manuscript. So please try to review your own paper as a reviewer, adopting the criteria normally adopted by the journal. And please submit your paper only when you think that there is nothing anymore to improve in your manuscript. Otherwise, it is better to wait and to improve further. Of course, the point arises when the editor has to decide between reject or revise. Okay? Normally, in Physica Medica, we just give one major, one minor. In some cases, we give two majors, but rarely we allow the other to revise for 3 times. Why? Because it is not the journal scope, the group, it is not the task of the reviewers or the editors to contribute, to improve your manuscript so as to arrive at an above fresher manuscript after many iterations. Okay, so you may be rejected even after 2 revisions in which you took care of the comments of the reviewer. If the paper needs too much other revision work, in general, I suggest to reject the paper. But to avoid problems with rejection, please read the journal's guide for others. I don't know how many of us do this when we submit to a new journal, the one for which we have no experience. See also the guide for reviewers. Please give due relevance to the quality of the English. Submit your scan or manuscript only when you think that there is nothing you can do anymore to improve it. And do not forget to write a convincing submission letter, because the submission letter is the first thing that any editor-in-chief reads. All submission letters. And please continue acting as a reviewer, because this helps you in writing your best journal. And finally, it is not a matter of saying, oh, my paper is good, my manuscript is good, but you rejected, you are a bad journal, and so on. So we must be convinced that this is really a good paper, but it is not up to us. It is also up to convince other people, the peers. So if reviewers and editors are not convinced at all that there is something that is not good yet, they will invariably suggest rejection. In some cases, major revision, but then maybe the editor-in-chief says rejection. Independently of any positive aspects, any positive comments you have been aware of and you have been informed of by the review process. In conclusion, please consider that publication in a well-reputed scientific journal is just a competition for the acquisition of the interest, which is the audience, which is the journal space. We cannot publish as many papers as we would like. Okay, the goal is the consensus in the journal's audience, and any lack of convincing strength of a manuscript for one or more reason invariably leads to paper rejection. But, and I'm finished this, rejection is not a failure at all. I was very sad to be rejected last week by another journal to which I sent another paper. I was rejected. I have something to say, but for me it's not a failure. For me and all the group. Okay, even though I have a very large experience in writing and reviewing the paper. Okay, so rejection is not a failure at all. But whenever you have a comment, either revise or reject, please apply all the comments, consider all the comments, apply all the amendments you can do. And because the goal is much stronger than just the fact that you publish or not your paper. You will avoid the 70% rejection rate, for example, in our journal, which is similar to other journals, and this will improve further the efficacy of your research work, and ultimately also this is for the benefit of science and our social progress. I thank you for your attention. I give credit to Elsevier officers who helped me in this preparation, and I will now present my colleague, which is Professor Juliana Tomadas, who is professor of medical radiation physics and head of the medical radiation physics division at the Department of Physics in Stockholm University. Juliana is affiliated with the Department of Oncology and Pathology at Karolinska Institute in Stockholm, and we have the pleasure, and I have the pleasure to be the past editor-in-chief from the 1st of January for Physica Medica, since Juliana will take over this role. Juliana Tomadas will be the next editor-in-chief from the 1st of January of Physica Medica. So I ask Juliana now to share her screen and to start kindly her presentation. Juliana, you may share your screen.
Juliana, you need to unmute yourself.
Thank you. I was not allowed to unmute myself.
Okay.
And it's the same for sharing the screen. So
Really?
it would be good to allow me to.
Please, can you help? It should let you.
Says that I'm disabled to share my screen.
Oh my God. Magdalena, can you see what is the issue in